Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering One Piece, episodes 442 and 443. Ace's convoy begins battle on the lowest floor, level 6, and the ultimate team has formed, shaking Impel down. In these episodes, we have got a team of usual suspects put together. Y'all know I'm a fan of this. And we get to see Crocodile's power at work again, and it's wonderful. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Oh, good. I am Natasha. Sorry. David is in the chat and he couldn't hear me earlier, and we were wondering if it was maybe, an issue with me, but it seems like he can hear me, so we're good. Thank you very much to Florian for commissioning this episode. I was really glad that we only had 2 episodes to cover this time because I have so much that I want to talk about. Like the past few groupings, I have wanted to talk more than, it went over, I think, for both of the most recent ones. There is just so much delightful goodness in this arc. And I'm trying to temper my excitement because, I was so thrilled with the Thriller Bark arc. I didn't mean to do that. It's fine though. I was so thrilled with it, and it sort of felt like it ended on a bit of a whimper for me. So while I definitely loved that arc and how totally goofy it was, there were parts of it that I just felt like, man, this had more potential, and I feel like you didn't really do with it what you could have. So, that may be the way that this arc wraps for me. But I feel so guilty, you guys, at how much I'm loving this arc because none of Luffy's compatriots are in it. I really feel like I shouldn't be this hype when everybody's gone and off doing their own things. I just feel disloyal. You know what I mean? And I can't help it. It just feels like the story is paced so much better because we don't have a million people that we need to check in on. And while we do check in, it feels like we're allowed to check in a more natural way versus the obligatory sort of way that we were having to before. And also, there is something to be said for the fact that whenever he has his crew with him and they go off and face their, the whatever sidekick or henchman, we know that ultimately they're going to win somehow, and it's just feels like a chore occasionally. It's something on a list that we have to check off. Okay, so, we're going up against so-and-so and his henchmen are so-and-so. So we're going to assign each of his henchmen to one of the crew members, and how are they going to, and it's always I shouldn't be saying always. That's unfair. But it is very frequently kind of by the book. And in some ways, that's fine. To a degree, doing things by the book is part of what draws you to a series, is that you know what you're getting and you like the format and the formula of it. And that's not an inherently bad thing, but I just think that it's remarkable how pulling away from doing it that way has seemed to do the show so many favors in this arc. So, all right, let's get into this here because I, like I said, have so much that I want to say. So this, the way that this starts off, we pick up where we had left off with, Luffy is, with Iva having just eaten and regained most of his strength and poor Bon Clay is on the ground having like fucked himself up pretty good, trying to urge Luffy to get well. He like sacrifices his, there's almost a sense to me like Bon Clay infused his vitality into Luffy and it was sucked out of him. And so Luffy is okay, but now Bon Clay is not. And so he's on the ground here, and we have a reminder about Ace and the situation with him. Iva tells Luffy to pull out the Viva card, and when he does, this is actually, I think, a little bit later, but when they get to a different level, the Viva card is moving like in a really weird way. And that turns out to be because Ace has been removed from the facility, so he's not directly above them anymore. So, yeah, then we go to Magellan, who has come to Ace and is telling him, like, we are about to move you to a new location. And Ace is giving him that death glare, which I have to assume he would be doing anyway. But I also think that if he knows Luffy is in the building, that he must resent it even more, that he's being moved just in time for when Luffy's trying to track him down, you know? So we have all of our friends that have agreed to help Luffy. It's such a weird scene because Luffy just goes running, sprinting down the stairs. And he says Gum Gum Pistol and takes down all of the guards who are waiting and trying to stop him. He is being like, they have these weird traps that create like a grid of spears that pop out. And Luffy is able to just dance in amongst them like an acrobat. And then when they're trying to figure out where Ace is, Iva is standing over one of the guards and says, I'm going to need you for a moment, and puts the guard over his shoulder. And I'm thinking, like, what is he going to do with this guy? Well, we'll see this later. At this point, Luffy is doing Gum Gum Ricochet, and I love that all of these different transponder snails are filming Luffy going through them like a hot knife through butter. It's so embarrassing to them. They really were trying, and they are getting to level 6, and it is like no problem for them at all. And the guards that are watching this are actively sweating because they know eventually they're probably going to be expected to go up against this guy themselves. And he made such short work of the others. That is just really not something to look forward to. So this is when we get to level 6, and Luffy begins looking around for Ace. I love that this fucking guard is still over Iva's shoulder, just kicking. And Luffy just starts yelling, Ace, where are you? Because the place feels very open. It's like, it seems much more like a solitary room than it does a whole floor of the facility, the way the others have. Like, every other place in this prison has really seemed like its own ecosystem in a way. But this genuinely feels like we're just kind of in a weird little wing, which makes sense because it seems like this is sort of the lesser used area. A lot of people don't even know it exists. So this is when Iva makes use of the guard and injects him with female hormone. So I'm like waiting for a terrible reaction. And the guard transforms into a woman and then looks down and says, is this me? And Iva says, it's the you were always afraid to be. I'm beautiful. You've been reborn, my dear. You're no longer a jailer. You're a new Kama now. Oh, thank you. What have I been doing all of these years? My gosh, I don't know how I can ever repay you, Iva. I am absolutely living for this. Like, you know, it was questionable, although I didn't have a real problem with it, when Iva did this to somebody who was like just going to be taking offense at the fact that they were seen as a woman now and that it was an insult to his masculinity. But this guard being like, finally, I am who I was supposed to be. I love it. And I can't tell, like, Iva saying it's who you've always wanted to be. I couldn't tell whether Iva actually knew that or if, and like, it's supposed to be that Iva has a sort of sixth sense about people who are questioning their gender identity. You know what I'm saying? Or if it's just that gender, like, the way that Iva saw this guard react meant that Iva followed the cues and was just reading the room. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, they ask her, where's Ace? And she just like freely points and says that way. But he's not. We've finally gotten here and he's been fucking taken away, which truly is so infuriating, you guys. Like, you know, it's the sort of thing that makes total sense. If you know where he's headed, just get the guy out of there and then what? But after everything to like finally reach this floor and he's already been removed, I just really felt for Luffy on this. It's like, you know, getting changed, washing your face, getting into bed, and you're all cozied up and blankets are perfect. And then you realize that like you left your book that you were intending to read out in the kitchen or something. That's exactly what it's like. I hope that my comparison to leaving a book out in the kitchen, that you understand I am directly equating it with realizing that your brother has been removed for execution. I hope that that came across, those are equivalent things to me. So anyway, yeah, he gets there. Cell is half empty because we've got this other fishman, Jimbei, who is really wild looking. He sees Luffy and knows like the straw hat and goes, oh man, that's gotta be him. And he says, are you that straw hat? You're a moment late. He was here. They took him to the elevator for the prison transfer. There's still a chance that you can catch him. And Iva sees Jimbei and recognizes him. Iva has apparently just really rocked with a pretty like mixed crew, because I keep saying she, I'm sure that they would not care which pronoun I use. They know everybody, and it seems like on a very personal level. So they take off to the elevator. Jimbei, at this point, has not attempted to join them, which I was surprised by. Now, that comes later, but I really thought in this moment that he would be sort of like, maybe I'll go ahead and ask if they'll let me out and I can help. And we find out that, like, when Ace was saying Luffy is here, Jimbei was sort of going, are you sure, dude? That feels pretty far-fetched. Like, and he had said this earlier, but he continues to sort of try and bring Ace down to earth. I think he really doesn't want him to get his hopes up. And he seems to feel a little bit goofy that he was so wrong. So our friends are sprinting toward the elevator, and Iva is trying to like use the operating system of the elevator, which is just looks like it's a sort of pulley thing, trying to get it back up, but instead it's another trap, and there's like a weight with spikes that comes plummeting down, almost takes Luffy's fucking head off. And Iva looks down and is just like, oh, they can't let things be convenient for us. We'll have to find ourselves another way because they're watching us. Let's go back to the stairs. And Luffy is like, and just the fact that he is still keeping up after everything. I know he's basically fully healed here, but it's really, I just want to say that I'm proud of him, which feels silly, but I am. So they drop a cage around the staircase as well so that they can't get to it. Then this like fog of gas comes down, which it turns out is not a killer gas, but it will send you to sleep. And Luffy is just going, oh, it's fine. I don't care. I'm going to do what I'm going to do, which is what he always does. Charges into it and drops like a fucking stone. Meanwhile, Iva is just like, did he really just do that? Oh my God. And the guys who are in the cells around them, warning them, are just yelling like, get out of here, move. And they are only able to just get that out before they collapse also. So up in the observation room, they're watching finally that this gas seems to be working after everything else fucking failed. And this is Hannibal, and he's saying, "This now that I've done this, I can keep my job. Now to place the blame for this entire fiasco on Magellan." And one of the guys says, "Sir, the microphone is still on." And he just yells, "Come on, man." And I love that when we go to Magellan, he doesn't have any reaction, because I think he just assumes anything Hannibal does is him attempting to undermine him in some way. So he just does not take it that personally, which I think is really funny. And he turns to Ace and is just like, it's pretty funny how Luffy just managed to make it to level 6 like a minute after we took you away. That timing really sucks, huh? And Ace turns around with this like genuine look on his face, and I kind of wanted to yell at Ace, and I know that this is just me being like the pettiest bitch you ever met in your life, but that's exactly the reaction Magellan wants. Ace, don't give him the satisfaction. Just keep that shit inside. Like, you know what I'm saying? But again, that's me. I don't like to dance to other people's tunes. If it seems like somebody is really trying to get a specific reaction out of me, I am instinctually going to try and give them the opposite of what they want. And it has nothing to do with whether or not I like you. It's just like an instinct with me. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, fucking Luffy, dead ass asleep here with this fog that they put down. And the situation here with the fact that he is asleep, the fact that they have an eye on him and they know exactly where he is, they are very certain they've got him well in hand. He's not getting away, and they're going to throw him into the same cell that Ace used to be in. And they tell Ace, like, he's going to get to know some of the torment that you've experienced as well. And Ace loses it here and decides to try and make a run for it. Now, this is remarkable because he is just going through, like, he's got these manacles on. And guys, I really, really cannot stop laughing at the fact that these manacles his hands are in front of him. That's just such a no-no. Don't do that. When you're dealing with a prisoner of his caliber. That's a rookie mistake, kiddos. You don't chain their hands together in front of them. Anyway, so we get this amazing moment that I loved so much because I feel like it's something that kind of is what I am always thinking, but never really happens with the kind of like emphasis that it happens in this scene. Ace is, left, right with this trident and really like killing it. And everything is feeling like he's a badass and maybe he's actually going to manage to like take care of this. And then as every man is like going down like a fucking sack of flour, Magellan just steps forward and grabs the end of the trident between his like thumb and forefinger. And what I mean about this is the emphasis of how small this weapon is in proportion to Magellan and how little strength it takes him to bring it all to a complete halt. This is something that I think about with these villains a lot because so many people in this universe are oversized. They're all wildly different sizes. So you've got folks that it just feels like they should be able to handle a fight in this manner. And instead, for whatever, scene that you're in, we have to have them fighting at a level that suggests this character who is a tenth of their size is as strong as they are in a way that doesn't always read like it works, if you know what I'm saying. So I just really, really enjoyed this, even though it doesn't, like Ace drops the trident and he backs up. So there's a confrontation of a different kind, but it's just wild. Like he runs away here and Magellan just grabs Ace. Like when I say grab, I don't mean he grabs him by the arm, because his hand is almost the same size as Ace's entire body. So he just reaches out and grabs Ace by the back of the head and presses him into the floor until his hand is completely covering Ace from the top of his head to the base of his torso. And he is flattened like somebody just draped several weighted blankets over him. And again, this is just something that is so frequently on my mind that it should work this way. And it doesn't. It just often doesn't work this way in the show. And I really enjoyed getting to see it in a way that's obviously, we couldn't have this happen for Luffy usually. He went up against Magellan and he actually put up a fairly solid fight in some ways, despite the fact that he obviously wound up getting poisoned and was in pretty bad shape. But you never see this sort of humiliating tactic used on Luffy. It's very, very rare. And a part of me is glad of that. And another part of me kind of wishes that we would, because I just feel like it's the elephant in the room. How much huger the villains are than our guys. That should just be an inherent advantage that is rarely taken advantage of. So anyway, we then Ace says, "Damn it, Luffy, I was hoping Hancock was lying." And Magellan, we're inside his head. And he's like, "I don't get it. How has this kid recovered from my poison at all? And secondly, how is he up and about? Even surviving it is remarkable. But he's out here fighting the good fight. And how is that even and he's really starting to get a little bit shook, which I really like because we know that Luffy got help. This was not because he himself is so resilient, although that's certainly a factor, but it is because somebody else was able to do something for him. But all Magellan knows is this dude survived somehow. And that adds to Luffy's mystique. I like it. So then we go to Mr. 3 and Buggy. And you guys, this shit had me cracking up so bad. So first we've got one of those weird sphinxy creatures that is doing the noodles thing, and he's yelling penne and wheat flour with noodle, or wheat flour and noodle with curry or whatever, and chasing them. Eventually, these guys wind up penned up underneath something. Can't remember if it's a table with a tablecloth over it. It's the sort of thing where they are not actually physically protected, but I think that maybe the sphinxes just don't know they're under there. I'm trying to remember. You guys, I was watching this and the whole scene and the way that it unfolds, I don't know why, but I feel like this might have been one of the funnier things that's ever happened in the show. And I'm going to wait until I get there so that I can go line by line. But it progressively got funnier and funnier. And it's the sort of thing that I wonder, very sincerely wonder, how it works with the sub instead of the dub. Because the dub is so hysterical. And you guys know that, like, I really have strong feelings at this point about how much better the dub conveys certain jokes. Whether the joke is the same joke or not, it seems like they managed to do something with it, with the dub, that gets the point across and still manages to convey the humor, even though the subject matter of the joke may be different. And I was just listening to the Overdue podcast. Those of you who don't know it, it's a podcast about the books you've been meaning to read. And I guest on it like once a year. Just recently did one with them to cover the book Cackle by Rachel Harrison. And the boys from Overdue do a long read project every few months. And what they're doing right now is they're covering the Iliad. And for those who aren't aware, you know, people call it Homer's Iliad, and it's actually theorized that, like, there was no Homer. Like, this is just a name that they gave in order to assign a single writer to a work that actually is a compilation of a lot of different storytellers and a lot of different time periods. So the issue that can come up with the translation of it is that the original Greek is not consistent in its time period and the slang that was used. So you run into this like kind of weird effect where you're attempting to translate it verbatim, but if you do that, the tone of it is really uneven and all over the place because it shouldn't, that's not really the way that it was intended to be consumed. And the whole thing with what I found interesting with the Overdue boys covering it, I can't remember the name of the translator, but they have chosen in particular a woman that they have read another translation of hers that they really, really liked. And this woman has like done a really interesting thing with the translation, attempting to use like language that feels modern enough that it is fresh and immediate, but isn't like so pop culture and irreverent that it feels totally anachronistic. And she attempted at first to use the same exact number of lines when she was translating, and then realized that didn't work. And there were a lot of things that she needed to be able to add a little context within the text itself and not in the footnotes for the line itself to work. And so it wound up being longer in the end because she added things, and how she wrestled with that. You know, she was working on this translation for like a year and making very little progress and getting super frustrated until she finally realized, I'm trying too hard to do a like quote faithful translation that is, I will translate each word into each thing when there's not always an equivalent word in the English language, or the joke they're telling makes no goddamn sense in our current context, things like that. And her whole foreword is about the context of everything really influencing how you should translate things, because the way it was intended to be consumed is with an eye toward the relevance to like certain current events or trends or fashions or whatever. And you can make that relevant, but you can't make it relevant to today and keep the language identical in translation. So anyway, all this to say, it's that series that the Overdue boys are doing is called Stop Homer Time. And they posted on their main feed, but you get it earlier if you're a patron. And it really was like sort of reassuring to me, because you guys know that I had a lot of like weird feelings about transitioning over to the dub at first, and feeling like there's so much, I don't want to say hate, because that's not exactly right, but I feel like there's a real puritanical quality to the way some folks watch anime, where it's like, if you do the dub, then it's not accurate. And seeing the way that this translator treated a work that's like seminal, the Iliad, and feels that, if anything, the way she's translating it is more accurate, was sort of validating to the way that I feel about the dub. I understand the thought behind, like, well, this is what it originally said, and I want to read it the way it was originally said, or watch it the way, but you're not. Inherently, a translation isn't the way it was originally said. And not everything works in a word-to-word translation. So I really like the moments in this show where there are certain jokes that are just genuinely really, really funny. I haven't been watching it the way I used to, which was I would have the sub that was in Japanese playing at the same time that I had the dub. I haven't been doing that anymore because I decided it was like too distracting. But I kind of want to go back and watch some of these scenes, because I feel that this arc has more genuinely laugh out loud moments than any of the arcs so far. And I'm just really curious how much of that comes from the original text and how much of it comes from them really knowing how to translate it and make it work super well, you know? So anyway, we then have this, what's the name of the guy with the split orange and white? He is a scissor man, and he is cutting up the floor like it's paper and then can curl it like, you know, he just sliced a ribbon out of it and just lift it upwards. And it's so weird because he does a bunch of these ribbons, and I'm watching this like, I do not understand what the goal is here, but it's to wrap up around the pipe that is pouring all of this poison gas into the room. And it closes it off so the gas isn't coming in. But all I could think was like, how are you able to like be right up next to it as you're doing all of this and it does not affect you? I guess it's supposed to be that we have to reach a certain like concentration of it. But yeah, I just really, this scissor man is a pretty fun bit. He can manipulate whatever he cuts as though it's made of paper. And I love Luffy just getting up and saying, really? That's cool. And falling asleep. And I was sort of like, I think that it's just supposed to be that he's still recovering, but I was puzzled by the fact that Luffy keeps on falling asleep. So we got to keep going up, crab guy. Thanks for blocking out the gas, but now I can't go up the stairs to Ace. And they have to figure out another way that they're going to do this. So Iva takes down, there's a transponder snail that she's able to, I'm doing the she and he. I don't think they would care, but I'm going to try and do they as much as I can. It's one of those things that I really judge myself for, because they as pronouns is a valid, like, you know, it's a totally valid choice, and it's in keeping with the way we speak already, as much as some people try to protest. But I find they so much harder to remember than just transitioning to a different gender entirely. Like, we're using it now in a way that I'm not as used to. And so I feel like awkward with it, and I often fuck it up. So forgive me, everybody listening, if I fuck it up. I'm really, really trying, but I know, I just want to forewarn you that I know this is a pronoun that I trip up on a lot, and it's just because of ingrained habit, you know? So I love this when Iva is just like, we have quite the melange of obstacles in our way. And there's just a scan across of all of these different people that they are going to have to deal with. And this is when Luffy pulls out the Vivre card and realizes like, oh, okay, well then they must have Ace outside of the facility now. And yeah, we see him on the surface and he is being led to a ship. He's like on a dock here. I love like all the guards behind him, these goofy fucking like cowls that they have to wear. They look so silly. And Ace is sort of like, there's a real sense of, I want to do something to draw things out and make some opportunities for my brother. But he doesn't seem to know what to do. He's looking up at the sky. There's a bird up there. We have just a sort of long, drawn out, And Ace comes forward. And guys, I don't know if I noticed this before, if this is a new thing or what. But Ace's tattoo there's an S that's crossed out. And I don't know if that's something that's been referenced and I just forgot. But I do not remember at all what that's about. Sorry, guys. I'm just over in the chat over here. David is saying, singular they is attested to all the way back to William and their werewolf, written before TH sound was TH and was the thorn. And Jane Austen used it, and Shakespeare, it's totally fine. And was the thorn? I don't know what you mean. I'm so sorry, David. I feel like a real dodo, but I feel like I'm misunderstanding. But yeah, it is like anybody who knows anything about language, they are not going to argue with the singular they. Like it's a completely valid thing. It's just I am not used to using it purposely referring to a specific person. Usually I'm usually referencing like oftentimes I'll use a singular they in reference to someone did something and I'm not sure who it was, so I just use they. And it's really, really tricky for me to switch it up in my brain and be like, no, this is in reference to somebody who you know. Thorn is a character that used to be in the alphabet. It made the TH sound. Oh, right. I know about this because the ye old candy company signs, that Y is a like sort of evolution of the Thorn like character in the alphabet. So it used to be the old candy shop. That's actually what they were saying. But we have weirdly like corrupted it and made it into ye old, which is never what it was meant to sound like, and it doesn't actually make any sense. Thank you. Yes. Now I remember because I recently like watched or read something about that. So we get the handover of Ace, and as he's walking past, he turns and looks at the prison again and is thinking about Luffy and just sort of like, is there a way to avoid getting on this ship? And it's, I really felt for him because knowing all of this and only having Boa's word for it at first, you could tell yourself like, all right, maybe she doesn't have the right information or she's fucking with me. I don't see why that would be true, but I can like, try and comfort myself. But now he's got actual confirmation that Luffy is in there. So we go inside and Luffy, when he's talking up to Iva keeps saying to give up on Ace, that I will get you like out of this prison. I can break you out of here, no problem. But I'm not going to be able to help you with Ace. Put your faith in Whitebeard and believe that he would do something to help one of his own. He would never give up. You might not be able to make a move, but he can. And this is when Luffy says, I'm going to Marineford. And Iva tries to argue with Luffy. And it's really funny because we have a moment that's like almost exactly mirrored in the recent episode of the live action One Piece. in the live action, Garp is holding Luffy up and Luffy's laughing. And Garp is reminded of Gold Roger. And it's the same position, like he's holding him up. And the energy of it is like, it's just a transition of like, what you're doing is reminding me exactly of the face somebody was making and the energy they gave when they did it. So what happens here with Iva is they're trying to convince Luffy to like give up. And Luffy says, I am not going to give up. If I gave up, I would regret it. And he says it with this intensity that Iva suddenly sees Dragon standing there and backs up in a hurry and is just sort of like, well, shit, this is unflinching. And we get interrupted here by Crocodile saying, if you want out so bad, then let me free. I'll make a hole in the ceiling of this place and you'll be free to go. I was so excited about this, you guys. And Luffy has much more of a reaction to seeing Crocodile than I was expecting. But I appreciated that we get a flashback of Luffy like impaled on his hook and are reminded, like, there have been a lot of baddies that Luffy has gone up against that have done some damage to him, but that hook through the chest, that was a real particular kind of fucked up. And I am very willing to buy that the Crocodile is somebody that he is more afraid of than others. But yeah, so he's standing there grinning with his creepy fucking face. I love him. He says, did you miss me? And that's how the episode ends. And I was like, honestly, yes, a little bit. I did though. So we jump into the next episode from here. And the main thing that I want to talk about here. So, well, I do, but I'm not going to do it. First, we have to recover everything. So I'm trying to get through that. Oh yeah, here it is. So Crocodile and Luffy, like, they have to sort of, there's an interesting implication here, and I do not know what is going on, but the energy of it is Crocodile has some kinky shit in his past, or has some things that he is like just personally ashamed of. I don't know. And Iva knows about it and is essentially holding Crocodile to his good behavior by saying, if you fucking do anything to betray us, I am going to tell everybody about your dirty little secret. Y'all, I can't. I am so curious about this. There is an, if those who don't know, P.G. Woodhouse is a comedic writer, and he does a series, or he did long ago, a series that was the Jeeves and Wooster series. And Jeeves was a butler, and Wooster was his sort of like a little airheaded, rich master. And very well-intentioned, but harebrained with these schemes a lot of the time. And it is such a fun series. Like, P.G. Woodhouse is truly a master. So there's some problematic stuff, of course, in certain ones, but there is a story where Jeeves finds out some dirt through a guy's butler who he talks to, and it's held over this man's head the whole book to keep him from doing shitty things, because he's otherwise a fascist, essentially a bad person, and has this like very upright, super hyper masculine image, and has to keep that in order to continue doing like the work on the ground that he's doing. Like, imagine a sort of like Ben Shapiro, but actually really, really masculine and not the weird thing that Ben Shapiro has going on. Like a public figure in that way. And eventually at the end of the book, you find out the thing that is the thing that's being held over his head is that he has the most popular lingerie shop in London named Eulalie. And it's like his life. And he is rolling in it. But it's from that, not from what he does, which is what he lets everybody think. Like, it's not about his, like, you know, his fascism. It's about how much he loves to design and sell lingerie. And it's one of those secrets that feels so silly, but it works perfectly tonally with the goofiness of the book series themselves. And it's just shy of being like offensive, you know? I really love that little twist. And I want to believe that's the twist here, is that Crocodile has a very successful lingerie company and that he is just super into designing lingerie. And that is his dirty little secret that he doesn't want anybody to know and guards very jealously, even though it's super not really that big a deal. I can see why he would think so. And that's going to be what I go with for his, like, you know, and the fact that, Iva is out here like, look, Luffy, I get it. If he's offering his help though, we gotta take it. We just don't have the options here to be picky. And he calls Crocodile Sandy Pants. And then for like the rest of this episode, calls him Croco Boy. And I met him when he was a rookie, still wet behind the ears. I wouldn't worry if this guy tries to double cross us. I'll whip him into shape in a jiffy. As long as I've got an eye on him, then he should behave just fine. He's a scoundrel, but he's a scoundrel with a weakness I know well. What I really think is that maybe Crocodile started out as a woman and maybe I've transformed him. But I really am not sure whether Iva's power works in the other gender direction, because so far we have only seen Iva turning men into women. And to a degree, that really is kind of like an unfortunate thing where it almost seems, oh, well, we're going to choose the most humiliating thing, which is, of course, a man being turned into a woman. But I am willing to sort of let that go and not look at it that way because of the fact that the most recent guard was not humiliated and was pleased to have been transformed. But I just don't know whether or not it's within Iva's power to turn somebody from woman to man. Like, can that be done? Sorry, I'm missing a bunch of stuff here. David says, what's the secret? Speculate wildly. And it's also so on point, I think in reference to the Jeeves and Wooster thing. Does Nami buy from Crocodile's company? Oh, you mean like lingerie? No, I don't know. Nami likes pretty things, so maybe she would. She doesn't seem like a lingerie girl to me, but she actually has been known to like shopping. So I think it's just that we haven't gotten to see that side of her because they don't have leisure time in this show. You know what I mean? But yeah, so what I was saying does seem to be like working. And then we get the chiming in of Jinbei and him saying, I will definitely put my life on the line for Ace. Let me get in on this as well. So they've got like a pretty solid crew going on. And then a bunch of other dudes that are like off to the side, they can hear all of these deals where, oh yeah, as long as you like pledge that you care about Ace and you'll put your life on the line, you're going to get a way out of here. And they're all like, oh yeah. Me too. I would die for him or whatever. And I just really like the way that was written or whatever. It just, the implication just being they have no interest in what they're talking about. There's no sincerity to it. And then we get the part that I was the most excited about. Oh, wait, I'm skipping over something. My bad. All of these fucking guys coming in with their gas masks. We've reached level 6. Move in. And they have to bust through that wall that the orange and white one put up. And when they come in, they're like, well, they must still be down here. But there's a spiral that has been cut out of the ceiling. The coolest concept. I really, really liked this as like an option. We don't see the way that this is done because, like, if you stop and ask too many questions, it doesn't make a lot of sense that this was even possible. But in terms of like the visual of it, I love it. And so we've got one guard remaining who, after everybody else, oh no, I lie. It looked like it was a guard remaining, but no, all of them are still there. And they're like, well, where is everybody? And they hear a voice, and it's the original jail manager, Shiryu. Which, it's funny because we've got Hannibal and we've got Magellan, which are both names of, like, you know, figures in history. Not really sure why Magellan was chosen. Hannibal is, of course, for me, I'm thinking of Hannibal Lecter, and you're in like a hellscape. Choosing a serial killer works, you know. I don't get the choice for Magellan, though. Like, he was an explorer, and I'm not sure if there's a different Magellan they're referencing that I just don't know about. But Shiryu doesn't ring any bells. I don't know if this is a name that's from something else or not. And he basically is like, all of you guys are pathetic. This whole place is a shambles. And 3 people have managed to not only escape themselves, but they got Jinbei and Crocodile the fuck out of here. So if you are interested in like salvaging this situation, go fucking tell them to let me out of here. Tell Magellan I am going to assist if he wants. And Magellan, who is apparently like watching through a transponder snail, finds out that these other 2 have been released, and he's just like, God fucking damn it. Do you think I'd be held responsible? And this other guy's like, yeah, I do. I think you will be held solely responsible, sir. So now he's in panic mode, and I think that he is going to wind up taking this advice. And of course, he winds up calling out to, my God, what is her name? Sadie. And, telling her to get involved. We cut over to Crocodile, who has somehow like gotten out of his prison uniform and back into his actual clothing. He's wearing rings. He's got that fur lined, like that fur collar coat. He's got a cigar, like the whole bit. I don't know. They're sitting on some packing crates. So my assumption is that like they get stripped of their stuff and put into their put into their uniforms, and all of their stuff gets put in crates that are just stored very close by. But it is really funny to me. And honestly, I was kind of feeling Crocodile in the prison outfit. So I was a little bit disappointed that he is like changed out of that so fast. So we get then Iva talking to Bon Clay, and I was saying Emporio energy hormones only give you strength for 1 day. There will be side effects. Are you sure that you want to do this? And Bon Clay says, go ahead and do it. What choice do I have? If I don't, I won't even be able to get up off the floor. And I just love this. Yes, good point. Unless I wanted to carry you, which, for the record, I do not. And I just really enjoyed that delivery, that line delivery. So Iva administers this hormone. I felt so bad. Iva gets him in the nutsack is the implication. And I'm just like, why? Why must you? Poor Luffy, who is just like, please don't die, Bon Clay. And then we jump to them all in the snow, and they have got to like hurry through and get out of there. And you know, they're not super well dressed for it. Like, there's good as it's going to get with these coats and stuff. But reminder that most of Iva's compatriots are wearing fishnet thigh-high stockings on the bottoms. Like, you know, this is not ideal. So let's see. Iva, so let's give these boys hell. New Kama Land is gonna give them a fight the likes of which I've never seen before. And are you ready to rock this Straw Hat Boy? And Iva turns and some guy is like, oh, he went out on ahead of us. I thought that Iva would be upset and be like, God damn it, Luffy. But instead Iva just says, a free spirit. Let's catch up with him, candies. And it's great. Iva takes off at a dead sprint. We see these wolves that are standing there. And they seem like they're maybe going to attack. And they just stand and watch. And then Von Clay goes by going, wait, help, I'm going too fast. And he's pirouetting and goes right by the camera and like knocks the two wolves over and like goes off screen the other side. This was so funny, you guys. There's a a TikTok that was going around where somebody is trying to film on a slope, a ski slope. I think that I don't remember if they were skiing or snowboarding, but they are standing still and somebody is filming them on their phone. And as they're talking, you hear something coming from one side. They fly by and you just hear them go, Earl! And then a second shape that goes, we're going too fast! And it's like a split second that they fly past the camera and with genuine like panic in their voices. And that's the whole TikTok. It's just this person trying to have a calm moment and these two people who are completely out of control. So anyway, this just reminded me of that a lot. Apparently despite the hormones being a bit too much, it's sort of, you know, Bon is getting some compliments on having some excellent moves. I do like too that he's like, I'm getting sick though. I'm spinning too fast. This is too much. So we cut back to Ace. He is on the deck of the ship and he is I think he's sitting on like a slab that's made entirely of that sea stone. Because it's just sort of a weird thing. The chair is made out of it and the ground is made out of it, which it's a pretty good precaution to not only have the chair and chains made out of it, but to have like this sort of whole environment. If what I think this is correct, I may be wrong about that. But yeah, he is on a ship that is like heading out and we see the huge gates opening. And I was just like, he has gotten a lot further than I was expecting. And as he's going out, we go to Magellan, who's like, well, at least the Navy didn't come inside and see what a fucking disaster we are. So we got that going for us as he heads back inside. And everybody is running up the stairs here. And we get info that it's about 10 a.m. and that probably the execution, which is scheduled at 3 p.m, like maybe they'll be able to stop it in time. They've got some hours here. But I just want to mention here, you guys, that Luffy is running and Jinbei is running. Crocodile is just sort of floating like on a constant stream of sand. I don't remember seeing this before. And it may be that we never saw him having to run for a sustained period of time. So it just wasn't something that would have come up. But it is really wild looking. And I kind of love it. But yeah, Luffy is like, we still may have a chance. And it says crocodile grunts. Is this supposed to slow me down? And he puts his hand on this door. I'll turn it into sand. And we get a narrator. Let's go over how Crocodile Sand Devil Fruit power works. He can turn into sand as well as control it. His right hand can suck out any type of moisture. People and plants will wither away, while rocks and earth will turn into sand. I really do appreciate these little recaps. Like, I didn't need it, but I appreciate it. So he is able to completely sandify that huge door. And all of these guards are positioned on the other side of it like, oh, shit, because that is nothing. It takes him like 2 seconds. It's really, really easy. And we find out this is level 4. So these dudes begin to report in, and Crocodile is doing his crocodile thing where they shoot him up, and he is just standing there grinning, smoking his cigar, and they actually nail him through the eye, and we get a very like Terminator kind of shot through the hole in his head, and then we pull out and face him front, and he just grins at them while his head closes itself back up again. It just really was giving like, you know, Terminator 2. So I love that when they do this, I'm thinking to myself, they have to know that this doesn't work on him, right? Like, don't they know what the capabilities of their prisoners are? But then one of the other guys yells something like, idiots, use the prison bullets, which I don't know what that means because we're in a prison and those are their bullets. So I would have assumed those were the prison bullets, but apparently not. And Crocodile swipes his hand through these guards, and we get a pretty gnarly like montage of each of them drying out and their skulls. Like, it's really something. I love his power. It's so cinematic, and it's just very, very creepy. So Luffy catapults himself into the air and yells "Gum Gun Rain," and then, you know, does the fist. It's basically like Gatling, but with a wider reach. Then we've got Jinbei, who's like, I think he says like fishman karate, and he pushes outward with a fist, and the guards are standing there like nothing happened. What's going on? Jinbei does not move a muscle. He just stands and waits. And then all of a sudden you start to see the like pebbles on the ground starting to move away from him. And one of the guards begins like inching backward, and another has a weird like sort of indent in his stomach as if he were pressed against a railing or something, but the railing is invisible. And then abruptly they all go fucking flying at the same time. And I have like only a very, it just was such a weird moment how long it took that I have to assume if they decided to run, it wouldn't have worked because his power sort of kept them in place. But I did sort of think, y'all are just standing there going, well, nothing happened. Maybe you should try and attack then. What do you say? But anyway, that's the moment where the camera pulls out. And we see Jinbei and Crocodile standing there with Luffy between them and like 30 guards that have been completely knocked out. And the guys who are in the observation room are like, Luffy plus 2 warlords, I just don't see it for us. I don't think this is going to work. And I love when there's still some guards standing there. Luffy just says, move, we're in a hurry. And we see the 3 of them sprint forward. And then we get that cool thing that the show does occasionally in really dramatic moments where the animation gets really detailed and there's a lot more detail and shading than we usually get. And I always like it. And it, you know, get a bit of a pause with it as we hold on that shot before we go over to Hannibal. And I love it. These guards are yelling like, Hannibal, oh God, help. And as he realizes how dire the situation is, he begins to run. Now we get the part that made me laugh, like really, really laugh, you guys. So we're with a manticore who is just saying, long johns, tea back, pantyhose, briefs, leggings, bra, bloomers, briefs. Now, you guys, this isn't what made me laugh. This is how the scene starts. It's 4 of them just sort of sitting around, and I guess it's a covering made of wax that they're hiding under. But Buggy is under here with Mr. 3. And he says, oh, this waiting around sucks. It's not funny anymore. Why are they hanging out here? Stupid underwear fetishists. And Mr. 3 says, just cleaning their butts must be nice. To which Buggy replies, this is what's going to stop us from getting out of here. Like, if the guards come, all of this was for nothing, and these things won't stop farting. It's awful. You guys know that normally bathroom humor is not my jam. You understand how I felt about, like, Magellan. There is something about how ridiculous the scenario already was that for him adding, and they won't stop farting, completely sent it over the edge for me. And I had it playing, and I was like standing at the counter in my bathroom because it was playing on my phone while I was brushing my teeth. And I had to stop and take my toothbrush out of my mouth and just lean on the counter because I started laughing so hard. I was like spitting. I could not handle it. The whole thing with Buggy and Mr. 3 is pure gold. Everything with the two of them, I love it so much. It's so fucking hilarious. And then we go to like the outside like view of them hidden under here. And we see the manticores farting. And then all of a sudden there's like another sound, like a fart sound. And Buggy yells, that was you. And Mr. 3, I'm sorry. Smells like burdock. Yeah, I know. What does that mean? It was the, I know. I fucking lost my mind. This scene was so funny. I will never forget this one. Like, this is going to be the arc where they talk about farts for me. Like, I live for this. This is so good. It's so good, you guys. So we then go to Crocodile, and he tosses in the keys into this cell. And I love when this dude says, oh, thanks, buddy, and then looks up and recognizes Crocodile. And I was sort of like, Crocodile, I feel like you could just melt that metal into sand. No? Maybe he can't affect metal. Because the grating, maybe it's that sea stone stuff. I don't know. But he says, you're a man of action, aren't you, Mr. 1? And the camera slowly lifts, and we see Mr. 1 locked up back there in his shirtless glory with his blonde hair, looking real fucking intimidating. And I think I recall, guys, finding Mr. 1 really intimidating visually, and then his like actual fighting style was sort of uninteresting. I don't fully remember, I'll be honest. So we'll have to wait and see about that. But all right, so I've got to wrap. I'm way over time. But thank you guys so much for hanging out with me and listening. And thank you, David, for being here. Appreciate you, Florian, for commissioning this. And until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.